So I conducted a poll on my Instagram asking which of these dresses I should make, and 62% of people said left. And also on YouTube, oh my god, about 95% of people chose the left one. So that is what I'm going to do today, and hopefully we can do the other one in another video. So to begin, I'll make a line through the apex point, and from there I'll start marking my bust radius, which is 3¼ from the apex point. So I'll mark that all round, and then I'll make a circle from that. So this will be my bust radius, and from there I'll make a line from the apex point to the neckline, and then from the apex point to the armhole to the shoulder, and then I'll mark ½ an inch on both sides of the waist dart on the bust radius, and then 1/4 of an inch on all my contour lines. From there I would make a line from the apex point to the bust radius, and then to the neckline, same to the shoulder, and then also to the armhole. And then I'll also make a line from the apex point to the bust radius on the waist dart. From there I'll go in ½ an inch on the side and cut it out, and then I'll mark in my allowance. If you don't have allowance on your pattern yet, don't do this because my pattern already has allowance. And then from there I would go down 1 inch at the armhole, and at the center front I'll go up 1/4 of an inch and 1¾ of an inch down, so the total length will be 2 inches. And then from there I would start to shape my cap. So from the 2 inches line, and then also to the side like that, and then from the top also I would shape it like that, like you see. So you can decide to go a bit higher or lower depending on how much bust you want to show. So I'll use my curve to smoothen the lines a little bit. I'm just trying to deepen the lines a little bit so you can see clearly what I am doing. And then once I'm satisfied with the cap, I would extend the lines to the allowance, and then to achieve the ruching at the center I would transfer all the darts to the center front. So what I would do is to slash the center line at the center front to the apex point, and then I'll fold in my shoulder dart and then hold it down with my adhesive tape, and I would also close all the contour lines that I made like that, and everything would be moved to the center front. And then I would also remove the waist dart. So now I would cut the lower side of the top. So to do that, I will first put in notches to know where they join each other, and then I'll also do notches on the center part of the lower part and label the center front and make green lines. Now back to the cap, I'll put the lower sides together with an adhesive tape, and then also smoothing the upper part of the cap a little bit. The line shifted because I closed the contour lines and also the dart, so I'll just perfect it a little bit, and then I'll cut out the cap now, and the upper part wouldn't be needed. So once that we have this, I will duplicate this for the lining part of the cap, and I would mark that center line at the lower side there, you can see, and then make a line from the apex point and then at any part on the upper side. So I'll cut through this. I'll cut it out and then cut through the lines and then close that that over there with an adhesive tape and then smoothing those sharp corners a little bit. So the inner part of the cap would be like a normal cap, if you get it. Yeah, like a normal corset kind of, without the ruching. So yeah, so what I'll do for the main one is to insert a paper over there at where the space would be. And then that extra thing will help bring out the ruching at the center front. So this is how the main thing will look outside, and then the inner lining and also the lower part of the top. So this is how the front, this is all the patterns we need for the front. And now to the back, as usual, you make a line through the dot and then mark the center and then make a new dot. And then at the side, minus half an inch and then cut it out. And then I'll mark my allowance, my side seam allowance. And then I'll go down 1 inch at the armhole like I did for the front, close my dot, and then draw in my back depth. So for that, you decide how much lower or higher you want it to be. And once that is done, I would cut it out, and then I would have to add 1 inch zip extension to the center back. So I'll be using the same fabric as the lining for the top. So I'll cut 4 of the back pieces and 2 of the ruching cap or the outer part of the cap, and also 2 each for the lining part. And then I'll cut 2 of the center front and then cut 4 of the side front. Now for the skirt part, I have a long piece of paper and then I folded it in half, and then the crease at the center would be my center line. So from there I would make a horizontal line at the upper part of the paper, and that would indicate my waistline. And to find the waist, I divided my waist measurement into 6, and then from that measurement I marked half of that on each side of the center line, and then I also marked how long I want the skirt part to be, and that was 27. And then at the waistline I went up 1/4 of an inch on both sides and then curve it like that. You will see the effect it will give on the skirt later. And then I'll mark my waist to hip, which is 9 inches, and then make a horizontal line. And for the hip measurement, divide your hip by 6 plus 2 inches on both sides. So I will mark half of that on both sides of the center line, and then from the hip I'll mark the length of the skirt. So now that that is done, what I'm going to do now is to draw a line from the waist through the hip line. You can see that I have a shortage of paper, so I extended it with some extra paper and then extended the line downwards. So now we don't have to leave the lower side of the skirt like that, else it will give us a funny shape. So you see that the side of the skirt is longer than the normal length. So the normal length is 27, so I'll mark that on the side and then join it to the center, so that all the sides from the center of the skirt to the side of the skirt will be of the same length. So that will give you that kind of oval shape or curve at the lower side of the skirt. So now that that is done, I added half an inch allowance on all the sides and also at the hem. So this is what the skirt pattern will look like. And yeah, and this is the fabric I'll be using. It's a blush or baby pink fabric, and it's a bi stretch. It's same as I used for the halter neck dress. It has a little bit of stretch on both sides. That's why it's called the bi stretch. So yeah, So now I'll lay all my patterns and cut them out, but I'll first start with the skirt. So I'll cut 5 pieces of the panels, and you can see that I added an extra 1/4 inch on the side seams because I wanted the allowance to be a little bit bigger. So as already said, I'll be cutting 5 of these, and for the center back I'll be cutting it a little bit different because there is a zip at the center back, so you would see what I would do. So yeah, this is the center back, and then I'll be cutting 2 of that. You can see that I folded the pattern in half and there's an opening there, and then I marked 1 inch for the zip extension, and I also added 1/4 inch on the side seam. So once that is done, I would cut it out, and then I'll cut also the patterns for the front pieces. So these are all the patterns for the top. Everything has been cut out. You can see the number of pieces. I have indicated all of them on the pattern. That is if you're using it the same fabric as the lining part for the top. I wouldn't be lining the lower side. So I'll be cutting some pieces for the strap, and the total width was 4 inches because I want the final width to be 1.5. Now I'm joining the front pieces of the skirt, so I'll take 3 of the panels and pin them together. And then also for the back piece, this is the center back. I would pin the center back together and then pin the rest of the 2 panels on each side. Once that is done, I would sew all the areas that I have pinned. And this is how it looks. Later on I'll be doing the slit at the front, but we haven't gotten there yet, so I would go and iron. But first I would put the front and back skirt together and then sew the side seams. And now that that is done, you see the curve at the lower side and also at the waistline. You can see that it makes the skirt, it gives the skirt this really nice shape. So if you didn't do that, then please do that, else your skirt will look funny. So now that that is done, what I'm going to do is to take the caps. You see that I'm making this arrow so that I don't turn it upside down. It can be really confusing. So yeah, this is the part where the ruching will be done, and also this is for the inner lining. That also I'm making the arrows there, and you can see that I put in the notches. So what I'll do next is to fuse an interfacing on the lining part of the cap, and once that is done, I would pin them together like that, notch to notch, and then pin it, and then repeat the same process on the other side and stitch it. So after stitching, I would snip to ease that part because it's curvy, and then also with the part with the gathered stitches, I would separate the upper part of the thread from the lower side and then pull it together to form the ruching or the gathers. And once that is done, I'll set that aside, and then now I move to the lower part of the top. So this is the center front, and then I would pin the side fronts to it. So this is how it should look, and then I'll pin them like that. So once that is stitched, what I'm going to do next is to set that aside again and then pick up my caps, both the inner part and the lining or the outer part. So make sure that the ruching is the same as the center of the lining part, and once that is done, I'll pin the center together for both the lining part and the outer part, and then I'll stitch. And once that is stitched, this is how it should look. I would iron the center flat. And then what I'm going to do next is to pick my lower part of the top and then pin it to the caps or to the upper part. So I'm pinning them together, and the center part can be a bit difficult, but you have to work your way around it. And once the pinning has been done, I'll go ahead and stitch it, and this is how the center part should look like, very sharp. And then what I'll do is to snip the center part so that it will ease that V shape over there a little bit. And once that is done, this is how it's looking. You can see that the V at the center is popping. And now to the back side of the top, I will stitch all the dots, and this is how you can just iron it to the center front, but I am going to slash through it and trim it down a little bit, and then I would open it up and iron it. So I will do that for all of the back pieces. So this is how it's looking now. And what I'm going to do now is to join the side seam. So I'll pick one of the front pieces and join the side seam to the back. So this is the outer part of the top, and then I'll repeat the same process on the lining part of the top, and then I will stitch. And also for the straps, I'll fold them in half and stitch them. And once that is done, I will trim the side seams, and then I'll go to my iron and press everything out really nicely. But first, I will trim my side seams and then snip the curvy part of the cap at the underbust. For the side seam, it's optional. I always say that I don't like big side seams or seam allowances, so that is why I'm trimming it down a little bit. So once that is done, I would move to my serger and then serge all the raw edges on the skirt. So this is how it looks after I have finished every seam with a serger, because I am not lining it. What I'm going to do now is to unpick the center back of the skirt a little bit to enable me to be able to attach the top or the upper part of the dress to the lower side or the skirt part. So I will pin everything up, and then once everything is pinned, I'll move to the machine and stitch the waistline. And this is how it looks after that has been done. So now I would go and stitch or sew in my zipper. I'm using the invisible zip, so I would unpick a little bit to, yeah, this. Now the zip has been fixed, and what I am going to do next is to attach the boning to the lining part of the top. So I'm going to use a sew on bone. This is how it looks. I'll put the link in the description box if you want to get one for yourself. So this is about 50 yards or so, and I'm going to use the zigzag stitch to attach it to the seams. So this is how it looks after it has been done. I didn't attach it to the side seams, so yeah, you can see how it looks from the front part or the right side. So now what I'm going to do is to attach the straps. So from the side seam, I'll move out 2 inches on both sides, and then I'll attach my straps on after the 2 inches. And then at the back, I attached it after the seam over there. And once that is done, I would now open the zip and then attach the lining part. So what I'll do is to align everything side seam to side seam, and also the center part and the other part as well. And then once everything has been pinned, I'll move to the machine, the sewing machine, and stitch from center back to center back. And this is how it looks. I will trim down the seam. And then notch the curvy areas. Once that is done, I'll go ahead to my sewing machine and do an understitch on the lining part of the top, and this is how the understitch should look like. This is done so that the inner part won't roll over to the right side. So this is how this is what we have so far. And to finish that center back, I would flip the lining fabric over, so right side to right side, and stitch close to the zip on both sides. And once that is done, I would trim the seam. Also, you have to leave your 1/2 inch allowance. You don't have to stitch you can see that I left that without stitching it. So I'll trim the corners and then flip it out. And once it has been flipped out, I'll use my scissors to push out the corners to make it sharper. And this is how it's looking. You can see that it's nicely finished. And what we have to do to the lower side of the top, or how to finish the lower side of the inner lining, we have to fold in the 1/2 inch allowance that we left, and then we can hand stitch or do the stitch in a ditch method. So yeah, you can do it like that. But before I finish that, I would go ahead and do the slit at the front. So I would unpick to the part that I want, or how long I want my slit to be, and I'll be using my hemming adhesive because I don't want any seam there. So if you don't have the hemming adhesive, you can hand stitch it or hem it with a needle and thread with little stitches or invisible stitches. So once that is done, I back stitch it to reinforce the corners. So this is how I'm going to finish that part. I'm using the hemming adhesive, as you can see, and then I would iron it. So you can see that that part is closed. And for the finishing of the inner lining of the top, you can see that I folded in my 1/2 inch allowance and pin it down, and then I'll stitch inside the seam between the waistline. So this is how it looks from the inside, and also from the outside. You see that there is no seam. You can't see the seam because it has been stitched in between that line over there. So now I'll go ahead and sew my hem, and the dress is finally done. And the distance between the waist to where the slit starts from is 12 inches, so you can decide to go a bit lower or higher, that depends on you. And this is how the hem of the dress looks like. So guys, the dress is finally done. Let me know in the comment section if I nailed this dress. And also, if you like this tutorial, please smash the like button and don't forget to share. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye.